Well, friends, it looks very bright today, and today we are going to continue with our change of subject program. Tonight is just one gravitational equation, okay? So our equation tonight is gravitational equation. So gravitational equation. Well, you're not supposed to know the kind of equation it is. It's given as force, given as gravitation multiplied by the masses, okay, the product of the masses all over r squared. And we are supposed to make r the subject. R the subject. Okay, so those who are into physics, such equation will be very familiar for them. But over here in this case, we have been asked to make the R the subject of the equation. So how do we go about this? How do we tackle this equation? As it looks very beautiful over here. Okay, so our equation given is F is equals to capital G, okay, M1, M1, M2, sorry, it's M1, M2, M1, M2, okay, all over R squared, we're supposed to make R the subject. Okay, so without wasting time, let's see how we can solve such a question. Well, I've been saying that every change of subject that you find yourself involved with, all what you have to do is to be able to interpret, okay? You have to interpret, okay? You have to be able to interpret the equation. Okay, so what I mean is to be able to break the equation down. You see, so if you can interpret the equation, then we are almost through. So let's look at this question. Once again, we know the question given is, it says F is equals to capital J M1 M2 all over R squared. And our interest is to make R the subject. Okay, so what we see over here is being able to understand this whole equation. We have to see that the F over here is equal to J multiplying M1 and multiplying M2 all over R squared. Okay, all over R squared. Okay, so we see this can also be written as F is equal to J times M1 times M2 divided by R squared. Okay, if that is the case, we can also further expand it by saying that F is given as J M1 multiplying M2 times the reciprocate of R squared. Okay, when we look at it from this perspective, then you can see that we are getting closer, because we know the R squared has got 1 on top of it. So we call that one, we say it's a reciprocal of R squared. So to be able to get rid, okay, so first of all, let me remind you, to be able, okay, to be able to get the r squared not to be a reciprocal, what does it come into mind? You see, because we have 1 over r squared, and we don't want it to be so. But remember that once again, to every equation, what you do to the left hand side, you do the same to the right. So remember that in every equation, what we do to the left hand side, okay, left hand side, okay, we do the same to the right hand side. Okay, so the left hand side must always be equal to the right hand side. So you see this thing, this sort of, principle is always vital in any time we are solving equations. With the left hand, what you do to the left hand side, we do the same to the right hand side. So when we look at the equation again, once again, as we can see, okay, what do we see? The equation itself, once again. So we see that we have f, okay, f is equals to j multiplying m1 and multiplying m2 times 1 over r squared. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to multiply through by r squared, such that r squared is not equal to 0. Okay, so we're going to multiply through by r squared. So with our equation, since we know that it's given us, we're able to resolve it, broken it down to f to be equals to j multiplying m1 multiplying m2, okay, but all over r squared. What we are going to do is we are going to multiply the right hand side by r squared and the left hand side by r squared. So now let's multiply both sides of the equation by r squared. So when I multiply here by r squared, here by r squared, you see, so you've seen that whatever I did to the left hand side, I've done the same to the right hand side. Okay, so we can confidently say that the r squared will cancel r squared. This r squared will cancel this r squared. So it's going to be 1 times everything. Okay, so as you can see, the r squared will multiply r squared. Let me emphasize again. Alright, so because of that, we are going to get the equation to be r squared of f, meaning it's multiplying f, giving us j m1 m2 times 1. Okay, so we're meaning our r squared f is equals to g m1 and m2. Okay, once again, our interest was to make r the subject. So we are going to divide through by f. Okay, so I say let's divide the equation by f. Okay, so let's see that one. So our equation is r squared f is equals to g m1 m2. So we are going to divide here by f, here by and here by f. So as I said, I will keep repeating that you see these are the fundamental bases that if you know how to program that into your memory every now and then you're not going to have any problem when it comes to solving any equation. Because in every equation, what you do to the left hand side, you do the same to the right. You cannot ignore that. You see, because they say garbage in and garbage out. So if you do it right, you always go right. So we are going to divide both sides by f. So because of that, let's use different color. So see, I'm dividing here by f and here by f. So what do you see? You can see that now our f on our left hand side is going to cancel each other. You get it? So you see, now the f will cancel this f. So we'll be left with r squared, okay, which equals to g m1 m2 all over f. Friends, bear in mind that equation now given as r squared is equals to g m1 m2 all over f. Okay, but our interest was not to make the r the subject, r squared the subject, but our interest was supposed to make the r the subject. So what do? We have to see once again. I will repeat. I say take square root to both sides. Yeah, to both sides of the equation. Have you seen it? To the both sides of the equation. So once again, we have to remember that we are driving on the same boat. So what we are going to do, what we do to the left hand side, we do the same to the right hand side. Okay? You see, this is the common adage, a common language in mathematics when solving every equation. You know what you do to the left hand side, you got to do the same to the right hand side. You see, that's why I say, let us take square root to both sides, okay? To both sides of the equation. Yeah, to both sides, okay, of the equation. So our equation of interest is what we are able to work up to. Okay? As you can see, it's not anything difficult at all. So what we are going to do, we are going to take square roots to both sides of the equation. So our r squared is equals to g m1 m2. Just bear in mind that j is multiplying m1 and multiplying the m2. So all over the force f. Okay, so we are going to take square roots. Now let's take square roots in different colors so we'll be able to understand. So we take a square root to the r squared, and we take the square roots to the whole expression. So you see that what we've done to the left hand side, we've done the same on the right hand side. Have you seen it? What I've done is taking the square root of the left hand side of being the r squared, and also we took the square root to the right hand side, which is the product of g m1 and m2 divided by f. Okay, we know the square root of r squared, you see, will give us r. Okay, now let's look at it. The square root of r squared will give us r. So therefore our equation now will become g m1 m2, okay, all over f. So we have been able to make r the subject. Well, I think some people may be lost, but what I'm going to say is we are going to go back and recap. Let's see how we got to this point. All right, so the first and foremost, we have been given this equation over here to make r the subject. So what I told you earlier is, we have to be able to interpret, okay, the whole equation. All right, the whole equation means the g here is multiplying m1 and multiplying m2, all divided by r squared. So we should be able to interpret this equation. In case we're asked to find or make m2 the subject, if we don't understand or if we don't know how to do this expansion of interpretation, okay, like this, you see what I've cycled. Now, what I've done is I've broken them down. It's a g multiplying m1 and m1 multiplying m2 all over r squared. Okay, so after doing that, okay, we once again say that this same equation can also be written in this form, where f is equal to g m1 times m2 divided using our traditional, division sign over here, as you can see. So all what we're trying to do is to let you know that the division sign can be also written in this form. Okay, now let us look at it once again. On the third interpretation, as we broke everything down once again, we know this equation can also be written in this form. Okay, so that means we are confident of our knowledge as far as this equation is concerned. Well, we may not know what it stands for, but mathematically, we know that g is multiplying m1, multiplying m2, and multiplying the reciprocal of r squared. You got it? So I say, to be able to get r squared not to be a reciprocal, you see, we have to multiply both sides by r squared. So that's why I said, in every equation, what we do to the left-hand side, we do to the right-hand side. Okay? What we do to the left-hand side, let me clean this one. What we do to the left-hand side, we also do to the right-hand side. You got it? So that is how it is. Beautiful. So what we do to the left-hand side, we do to the right-hand side. So our equation, written, yeah? So we say multiply through by r squared such that r squared is not equal to 0. The reason is, if r squared is equal to 0, then this whole equation will not exist for us to be able to make r the subject. Okay, so now we demarcated, the multiplicity of the r squared by using different color. You see, we multiply r squared here on the left of the f, and we also multiply r squared on the right of the whole expression. Then we realize that the r squared over 1 over r squared, when we multiply, the r squared will cancel each other. So that will end up having a 1 here. Okay, and this 1, as you can see over here, When we multiply 1 to this whole product of G times M1 and M2, we yield back G times M1 times M2. Now, we see this changed. Now we have R squared. Okay, we have what? R squared. That's what we see over here. R squared times F is equals to that. So what do? We want to get rid of the F over here. Okay, so the R squared will stand alone. So what do? You see the R squared is multiplying F. And we know the inverse of multiplicity or multiplication is division. So we divided both sides by F. So let's divide the equation by F, both sides. So we see what we do to the left hand side, we do to the right hand side again. So we divide the left hand side by F and the right hand side by F. Then we know that this F is going to cancel each other. Then our equation became R squared is equal to the whole right hand side product. Now, our interest was not to make R squared a subject, but R. So what did you do? We took square roots to both sides of the equation. Once again, what you do to the left hand side, you do to the right hand side. So the square root of R squared and the square root of the whole product on the right hand side. You see, then we find out that when we take square root of R squared, that will give us R. Okay? That is how it is. So now this is the formula. Well, friends, this is where we will stop. And I guess everything is cool with this. Well, we're looking forward to see you around. Please subscribe and tell your friends about this wonderful tutorials we have been doing over here. Well, have a good day and enjoy the Saturday. Bye-bye.